the one thing you'll see with radial tire cars or slick tires cars is one likes to squat and one doesn't.
Yes.
You know, with what is the thought process, the philosophy behind that extension? You know, is that different for the different power adders on when it comes in? You know, people always kind of comment on the photos like, why does Marcus Burt's car look like it's trying to, you know, transform? You know, what's up with that?
So on a car like Marcus's, when you figure out where the engine placement is and the weight bias of the car, those things end up, that engine is massive, and that's a very lightweight combination per the rules in radial versus world. So you end up with a car that's heavy on the nose. It takes a tremendous amount of starting line traction to get that thing moving. Once you do, the way that they're putting the power into that thing, which is basically like with a sledgehammer, it all happens so quickly the car wants to wheelie, as you saw down at SGMP when it took flight. So the idea there is to extend the back of the car fast enough and far enough so that the rear center of gravity can over center the front center of gravity. In other words, you want to drive over the nose instead of under the nose. So it's a two-part scenario. One, we're trying to make enough traction initially to get this thing moving. And secondly, once we've got all that traction and we're applying all this power, those guys are turning kits on, locking stuff up. I mean, it's going bonkers all in like 1 second. We have to get the back of the car high enough in the air that it pushes the nose down so it doesn't flip over backwards.
That makes a lot of sense, and it's interesting to see how the different cars do that, because another car that you see, I've gotten pictures that do that, was when Big Chief had the Crow mod. It was the same thing, and it looks like with a turbo car, since the power curve is so much different, that with radials you really have to be able to use those shocks to get that extension and match all that up to the power management, correct?
That is correct. So, I mean, obviously anybody who's looking at data knows that a nitrous car, once you've turned everything on in, say, a second, it's done. It's just, the thing is just cruising down the racetrack now. So that G meter would come up and it would peak, you know, in that area of 1 second, 1.3, somewhere in there. Now your turbo guys, they'll see an initial high G meter, but then they'll hold the G meter. Like a twin turbo Hemi, that thing will hold a tremendous amount of G meter all the way through the run. Basically, it'll hold the G meter until you let off the gas or the cylinder heads fly off of it. So with the turbo car, you're looking for your shock graph to peak out later in the run when that thing is making its maximum horsepower and maximum torque. You know, that deal makes 5,000 horsepower at the 330. So we need the shock extension to take longer and give us more of a mitigation effect there, so that the suspension is growing throughout the run. The nitrous car, you get it all up there in 1.5 seconds, it's done, and now it's just cruising down the racetrack.
That's perfect. I mean, that definitely sums it up for sure for that question.